Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's webinar. This is Chantel Branch. I am the Senior Account Manager here at iPullRank. And I don't know if you guys don't know, iPullRank is an enterprise SEO agency that focuses on audience research and content strategy. Today's webinar, we're going to discuss developing an audience research plan for media publishers. And I have two experts here with me that are going to give you guys as much information as possible as we can in 60 minutes. So why don't we start with Adrienne? Introduce yourself.
Hi guys, so I'm Adrienne Barnes and I am the founder of Best Buyer Persona also I do content strategy, freelance content strategy for B2B SaaS companies. And so basically what Best Buyer Persona and my content strategy service does is we start always with audience research and then use that information that we learn to create either content strategies that are informative and helpful to our actual buyers, customers, audience, and or it turns into a buyer persona where we really are able to identify who our audience truly is, how they behave, why they behave the way they do, what is the job they're trying to accomplish, and so I'm excited to be here.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Amanda?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Natividad. I am the marketing architect over at SparkToro, which is the audience research company. As the marketing architect, I'm kind of setting the foundation for our future marketing efforts and for the overall product and customer experience. And so what we do is we help you do audience research at scale for a price point that is affordable. And we tell you all the things related to what your audience is doing online publicly on a de-identified and aggregate level. So in a not creepy way.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for joining. I figure we should just jump right into it. So why don't we start talking about the 3 top tips for audience research and persona development? Does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'll kick off here. I talked about audience research, right? But I think it's still kind of a term that not everybody knows what it is. But I think it's something that the savviest marketers are already doing. So how we define audience research at SparkToro is we call it, understanding your audience's behavior, finding their sources of influence, and then using that knowledge to inform all of your marketing efforts. And here are just some examples of kind of having this influence-driven marketing strategy. So, content marketing, right? Like traditionally in a content marketing strategy, you would do some keyword research and have an SEO-focused strategy, which very much, yes, you can still do. But you can also layer on the notion of influence. So if you look at what your audience is reading, let's say your audience reads Psychology Today, you might want to use that to inform some of your messaging, some of the topics, and just to really help position yourself as a thought leader. Other sources of influence, podcasts, especially niche or industry-driven podcasts. Sometimes, it's harder to find what some of these influential podcasts are. But, when you do, you can pitch yourself as a guest. You can listen to them and get more inspiration for content. And then finally, PR/media, getting covered by relevant press. It might be the New York Times. It might be an industry trade publication, just any kind of publication where you might want to consider doing some personalized pitches or, pitching yourself as a guest contributor.
Really quickly, Amanda, I have to tell you that Psychology Today slide, I literally was like, make sure you breathe when I saw the exhale. So it's doing its job, everyone. Yeah. Make sure you breathe.
Absolutely. And so, kind of to bounce off of Amanda's point, so when you're doing this audience research and you're trying to determine who is your audience, where are they, what are, like Amanda said, there are sources of influence. When we are, as ourselves, you are not just going to sit there and be like, well, I only read the New York Times, or I'm only on Twitter. We are diverse humans,
Yeah.
complex, lots of places, lots of communities, and as a company or as a media and publishing company especially, it can be really important to say, I want to try to find where our audience is mainly pulling their inspiration from. Where are they interacting? Where are they engaging? What is it they're trying to accomplish when they show up in these places? And what piece of them is showing up in these places? So one of the things that I really do to make sure that my content is focused and is going to be helpful to my audience is I start off with the reader persona. And that starts saying, like, I need to know, why is my audience reading whatever it is I'm creating? Why do they come to us? What are they trying to accomplish? What is their intention? What is the reader's intention when they click on a link, or when they come up to my blog post, or when they've opened or downloaded an ebook? What are they trying to achieve? And I think always having that aspect, or that piece of information in mind, helps you really make sure that what you're creating isn't just content for content's sake. It's going to have a purpose, right? Like, it's going to do a job. And so one of the things that I say is it's really important to know your audience. And like, so what does that mean? We hear know your customers, know your audience, know your readers. What does it mean to know them? And I say that in order to know your audience, you have to know how they self-identify. What are they saying about themselves? How do they call themselves, like in their Twitter bios or on their Instagram bios? How do they behave? What are they doing online? There are two ways to get that information. You can ask them, like, what are you doing? How do you do this? What is your workflow? How do you find new information? Where do you go to learn about this? And then the other way is to, like Amanda said, kind of in a non-creepy way, track them. And I use SparkToro, actually, and a tool called Audience for every single one of my buyer personas and reader personas. And the way I use SparkToro is I'll say, okay, they told me that they read articles, essentially. Like, that's how they want to learn their information. But then I go in and I'll kind of filter my audience, determine who they are, and come to find out they actually do listen to a lot of podcasts. It just wasn't pertaining to the work they're actually doing in that moment. So their headspace wasn't in, oh, I've created, like, they're not telling me because they think they gave me the answer they thought I wanted, essentially. Right. But then my digital intelligence tells me that they really are all watching, like, how things work podcasts, or a science podcast, or something else that's kind of off the wall but really interesting to find. And then another way you know your audience is you know why they behave the way they do. So that why comes from one of the most important ways of audience research that I love to do is through customer conversations. Yeah. So that what I'm looking for, and I'll start with number one, is identify the job your readers have hired your content to do for them. So, I mean, I'm sure if you're out there and you're creating content, you're like, this is going to do X. This is going to teach somebody how to do this. This is going to entertain them, or this is going to, inform, whatever the thing may be. If we're media and publisher companies, there's a reason you're creating your content. And hopefully that reason is beyond just clicks and dollars, right? Like, we're actually trying to create content for our audience that, we want them to read it. We want it to be important, memorable, powerful to them. So why is it that people are coming to your publication for a particular piece of content? What is your content doing for them? And identifying that job can be done via, like, job to be done kind of interviews, where you're just asking them, like, why are you here? What is it that you come to us to read? Why do you come to read? Why do you come to our publication? What are you trying to learn from us? Or, do we entertain you? Is it purely entertainment value? What's that job? The one thing they really want when they come to us or they think of. A second way to identify it, outside of your interviews and those conversations, is to survey your readers. And I think that's a really easy thing you could do even in the content itself. Just a little pop-up, 1 or 2 questions. It doesn't have to be these huge 150 question surveys that take 45 minutes. You can gather up this data slowly and succinctly as you go along. It doesn't have to be a huge process. And then, like Amanda said, join those communities, figure out where they are, and show up in those places. This isn't like, oh, I know they're all, in this Slack channel. That's great. Now let me see if I can go promote to that Slack channel, or just spam that Slack channel with our links. No, show up in an authentic way. Find out what kind of questions are they like having within those communities? What kind of conversations are they having? What topics are really timely? One of my favorite things as a media publisher, when I was writing for like mommy blogs or just trying to create my own little like crunchy food blog, I would take those trending topics, right? Like what is everybody talking about right now? And then I would filter it through my point of view or whatever was important and the message I was trying to make. And you can do that not just by like, oh, what's trending on Twitter for the world or for your area, but what is trending in your communities where your readers really are? What kind of messaging are they already talking about? And then what kind of language are they using? That's something that's really important when you're trying to resonate and connect with a reader. As we all know, you need to know what the words they're using. And that goes back to number 2, meet their tone of voice. Understand the words they use, the meanings. Just thinking about like Lil Nas, the marketing campaign he's created for this, what is it? Madeira? No, I can't pronounce it. I butchered it.
Montero.
Thank you. Yes.
Fun fact, that is a car that Mitsubishi made for a number of years. And apparently his dad named him after the Montero Jeep.
Really?
Yeah.
That is a fun fact.
Yeah, it's Montero.
But see, like he is out here creating this kind of content, doing this publishing of stuff that's like, if you're not in his community, if you're not in his niche, like I'm not, you don't even know how to pronounce it, right? Like you don't get it. But if you are, you resonate with it. You understand immediately where that reference comes from. You understand immediately like the history behind things and why this is important and the inside jokes. I saw a tweet where he's got these like billboards and they're kind of an inside joke, right? But so there are people probably going to this website thinking that they're complaining or doing whatever the thing may be, but actually it's his marketing and it's genius. And he knows the tone of voice of his audience. He knows who his audience is and he's resonating with them. And so that's basically what, before you want to create just content and pushing out content daily and really making, content for content's sake, know who you're creating for is basically what I say when you're creating a reader persona for your content strategy. And one of the ways that I do that, so we were talking about having audience research and really being able to curate a content strategy from that, right? Like actually understanding, well, okay, so we've got all this data, we've heard all these things, we've done this social listening, like now what? How does that become a piece? And so here I just kind of laid out the research findings and then how you can turn that into a content strategy. So repeated questions from your audience. Those can be content pieces answering the questions. It can be as simple as that. It can be I work a lot with B2B SaaS companies. So when our customers or buyers have questions with how to do something or how to go through the product, I want to make sure that we're answering that in our content strategy. So it's either a how-to piece, how to do these things, or a how-we piece. Ali Decker, I quote, give her credit all the time because she came up with this and I think it's genius. But she basically says, find another user, buyer, reader, someone in the audience who struggled with the same problem and let them tell the story of how they solved it, how they used your product to help gather this resolution. And then it's their story, and it's not just coming from us in a preachy tone, but it's coming from our community, right? Like it just seems like it's a really cool approach to answering in detailed questions of how to accomplish and how to get your questions answered. Number 2, the trending topics, I kind of made note to that before, but if you're in a place, like if you're in a position where you've got full-time staff, where you know that you can turn around pieces quickly, I think that's always a really fun place to start, is where we're going to, we're going to like, oh, this is trending in our community. Our community is talking about this topic today. Let's turn around something interesting from our point of view. And that's not just like clickbaity stuff. You don't want it to be spammy or sleazy. Make sure that it's value added. But those were always fun for me. One that I wrote, do you remember when Serena Williams was on the cover of a magazine, very large and pregnant and naked, like completely naked, and she was so pregnant. And I thought, that is gorgeous. And so I was writing for a mommy blogger somewhere, and I was like, this is why every mom should take a nude photo shoot like pregnant, like whatever. It was just cute. It was fun. It was turned around quickly, and it was timely. A lot of the mommy people were talking about, oh my gosh, like the scandalous, should she have done it? Was that too much? That's amazing. Like everyone had their point of view. But that's kind of something that is fun if you have the bandwidth. If you don't have the bandwidth, if you're hiring freelance writers, or if you've got like contract people where it's not necessarily like full-time in-house ready to crank stuff up, that's not going to work for you. So know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and work towards those. Common words that are repeated. So when a lot of what I do when I have a buyer persona or a reader persona or in my audience research is I look at what were the common words, what was repeated often, what kind of stuff were people saying over and over and over again, whether it's negative, whether it had a negative connotation or a positive connotation or neutral, even just in response to the publication itself. Are you a journal and they're calling you a journal, or do they call you a magazine, or are you a publication, like anything like that? Use those words in your content, in your ads, in your copy. That's just going to allow your audience to resonate and understand much more quicker. Who is it? The guy, Story Brand, and I can't remember his name. Somebody will. But he basically says, right, like your brain, you've got this like old, reptile brain that needs to make decisions almost quickly or immediately. And it doesn't want to waste energy trying to understand things. So I always use the example, if you are a shoe company and you've been calling your shoes tennis shoes, and then you go out and talk to your audience and you're doing audience research and come to find out most of the people who buy your shoes call them sneakers. So like, why not just call them sneakers? Like, let's just go with what your audience is already saying. So that's another way that you can take some of the audience research you've done and turn it into something valuable and actually productive inside of your own content. Number 4, a large portion of your audience belongs to a certain community. Do they? Are they somewhere? Are they in a Slack channel? Are they, in a Twitter group or a Discord or a Facebook group or wherever it may be? Where are they showing up? And they are. Like, if you think that most of your readers aren't somewhere, then I don't know, I'd say you're probably not in tune to that. You haven't actually dug that deep, because most of your people will be somewhere. I use SparkToro for that as well. It's just like, where are the people at? Where's the community? And then join that community. I actually stole this from Amanda. So she was saying, rather than finding out this information and then knowing, oh, this is where we're going to go send some ads, or this is where we're going to now like spam, join that place, be a part of that community, and like identify what's going on. What are the themes? What's the culture? What are the majority of those people? How often do they show up? How are they showing up? Using it for more than just a place to put your ads and promote is going to really enrich the entire content strategy. It's not just going to be like, okay, now great, we know, put that place down for your ad campaign or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're describing embedding. Like, remember when, well, not remember, but when you see a journalist who wants to really tell a story and they go to the place and live with the people and then report outward. So you're basically saying we should embed with our potential customers so that we can find out what's going on and then kind of report out.
That's 100% it. Yes. And that's like using these people's terms for sure.
Yeah. And I would even add to that, I mean, that's kind of the only way you can develop a true sense of audience fluency, right? To just truly like be, live, and breathe like what they say and do.
Right.
Audience fluency. I like that. Did you come up with that? Is that yours, Amanda?
That is mine. Yeah.
I love it. That's so good.
Cool. So in this slide here, what we did was we ran a SparkToro search just to give you kind of a peek of what to expect if you were to use SparkToro for these audience for the audience research. So just for the purposes of today, I went ahead and did a search for people who visit BuzzFeed.com. So the people who visit BuzzFeed.com, we know that it tends to skew women. So the top words used in bios, this would be their sort of self-identifiers, right? Where usually it tends to be what people have in their bios publicly on Twitter. So there's a lot of she, her, former, so people in former positions, and tweets. Tweets probably means tweets are about blank. So which tells me they're very active on Twitter. And yeah. Top hashtags used, they tend to use these hashtags. So with regards to what we would see publicly online, SparkToro updates about once every 3 to 4 months or so. So this is where we say we are not a social listening tool. I actually call us more of a social understanding tool, because you're not going to see the real-time insights, but you will see some of the trends thematically over a given quarter or so.
Okay.
You'll also see frequently used phrases. So this, tells me this is quite a political audience. And, they're very interested in politics, which makes sense to me. We'll also see some of their top roles, or some of their top job roles, like media, marketing. Interesting that most people are in media and marketing here. And some of their most mentioned skills, social media. That kind of links up with the whole top words used in bios, right?
Right.
That are on Twitter, social media,
Yep.
marketing, PR, and editing. So all in all, this tells me this is an audience that is probably pretty politically savvy, have a great understanding of social media and like how to use it,
Right.
and are probably in a journalism or journalism related field. Yeah,
It's really good. I want to play in there.
yeah, you should.
But then I'll fall into it's not where I should be, because I've been in there for who knows how long. I wanted to just kind of pull through some questions, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
Get a little more granular. I want to thank you guys for going through that deck. It was really useful, helpful, and for me, when I'm walking clients through just having a better understanding about why it's important to know who your audience personas are, some of this stuff I'm going to definitely swipe and repurpose for my purposes. So thank you. I really appreciate that from you guys. First question that I have for you guys, either of you can start, is why are personas and audience research important for publishers specifically?
You want to go, Amanda?
Yeah, I'll speak to the audience research part. So for publishers, I think having audience research is important because it covers a more holistic view over time. Where in the media world, like you're breaking news, you're working on hard-hitting stories, you probably don't have a lot of time for true social listening. Like you don't have time to be on Twitter all day, or like in a social monitoring tool all day, right? You're busy creating content. So I think it's helpful to look at this more holistically as an overview to get an understanding of your overall audience,
Right.
versus just trying to chase trend after trend. I think there's an opportunity for that, and especially when you are trying to tap into virality. But I think that's a whole separate function from true media publishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adrienne.
Well, and just knowing your audience, I think when you know them well, you're going to save a lot of time and like trying to figure out, like Amanda said, to Amanda's point, you're creating content that needs to be happening and needs to be published now. It needs to be created. It needs to be pushed out. And that it's almost, multiple pieces a day, depending upon how large you are of a publication, you really are executing fast, and you don't have time for it to be like, okay, so where do we need to like slowly promote this? It's not like you have a long campaign strategy, right? You really are. It's a matter of write it, publish it, get it out to the right people. Well, and finding those right people, finding the people who are going to care about what you're creating, that's really where the persona is going to come and play. You're going to know exactly where to push send, where to promote these pieces, and you can almost make it automatic, right? Like you can have it, the Zapier or whatever it may be, like push it out to these places for you, so that way like we're getting in front of our audience in the fastest way that we absolutely can. So you're not just a pray and spray on like a Twitter post or just posting it to your own website. Hopefully at this point, we all know we're not just posting the content to our own website. Like we're making sure that we are promoting it and pushing it out to different places. But it's going to clarify where those places are. Through the persona effort, you'll find like, you know what, our audience actually isn't on Facebook, but yet we've got people spending 4 hours a day creating like 10 Facebook posts and pushing these things. Maybe we should, eliminate that and really focus our efforts on Twitter and Instagram. Or maybe, guess what? TikTok. We were talking about TikTok before.
Yes.
TikTok is now like huge. Look at what the Washington Post has done on TikTok. You want to talk about an unconventional place for a newspaper to show up and push content.
100%.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, oh, this is where our potential best buyers are, our potential best readers are showing up. Let's figure out how we can show up there as well. So it can be beyond even pushing the content, but it can be about where do we show up? Where do we do our brand awareness? How are we getting the fact that we exist out there? And all of those are really important and key aspects to, at this point, staying alive as a media and publishing company is not easy to do. Like, it's not like we're all just sitting and picking up the newspaper in our driveway anymore. Like there are plenty of options for where we're going to go. So the more niche you can get with your audience, the better off you are, the stronger your segment is what I say when you're for the buyer persona, the user persona, reader persona aspect. The stronger that segment, the stronger you understand your niche, the better off you are, the stronger the fan base essentially that you create.
Right. And I imagine that in addition to the where and the when of it all sometimes can come into play once you know the audience better, because you know when it's better to speak to them, when it's better to share certain things. When, if you were thinking moms, maybe, when back to school starts, you might not want to try to launch, a certain idea or put something in front of folks. So even that piece of it, the timing, because you can have a great piece, and if you put it out at the wrong time, it's like it did not happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you've done everything else, that timing piece of it is really important as well.
Yeah. And I actually wanted to add onto this. It was something that Adrienne talked about earlier about having content with a point of view. I think this is a really good point that she brought up, because one, for marketers, marketing teams, I'll just do this quickly. For marketing teams, it's helpful to have content with a point of view for when you are the in-house person who and maybe you as the in-house person can focus on that like once a month or at a less frequent cadence. And then for the content that doesn't require a point of view, which is more maybe educational, more informational about your niche, that might make more sense to have a freelancer pick up. But I think newsrooms and publishers can use this model as well, and I think some of them are, right? Like, I think if you need a piece that needs an expert in a given field, that's when that person gets an op-ed, and that's the content with a point of view. And then when it comes to breaking news, maybe the reporters who have more of the expertise of the news at hand versus subject matter expertise are probably better positioned to create that content.
Absolutely. And that's, one of the reasons using these tools, like I said, Audience and SparkToro, they both inform like who in different ways. SparkToro does this good too, in a different way than Audience does, but who are the influencers in our audience? Who are the people who are the subject matter experts? Who should you go to if you're going to write a piece about X? Who's the person to reach out for this topic? Like, who's going to be the one that you should interview? I know it's really easy as a writer to kind of get in our little bubbles and like have we've got our 5 experts, and this is my person for this, and this is my person for that. And that can kind of create, like you end up recreating the same kind of stuff. It's almost an echo chamber. Everybody mentions the same 5 people, and there's that same 5 perspectives, and there's no like diversity and inclusion. Like, it doesn't branch out. There's no other ideas because we're all talking to the same 25 people, right? But when we can look out and really understand who's influencing our niche audience, that's going to give you, like Amanda said, a totally different perspective. You're going to have these different kinds of subject matter experts that are still subject matter experts. They're just more, and they're more important to your smaller audience than they are, probably to like the larger audience at whole. And it's going to give you a unique point of view, a unique perspective, unique pieces outside of just the same standard, random people that everyone else is talking to as well.
Right. It's good stuff. So with that being said, I do want to ask y'all, this is my favorite. I couldn't wait to hear this because you guys are super modern, super up on anything. What's the old school tactic that you find still works? I think I know Adrienne's answer, but I just want to hear her say it.
Okay, so let's see. The old school tactic that still works is getting on the phone and talking to your buyers, your readers, your customers.
I knew you were going to say that.
It was working in the 40s and the 30s when the idea of segmenting audiences started, and it's still working today. Now, is it the only thing you should do? No, like I've said, I use digital intelligence analysis. I use SparkToro. I use, social listening tools like Brand24. And, there are other ways, surveys as well. We do 4-pronged approach of research when we do a big persona. But at the cornerstone, at the foundation of it is me getting on a Zoom call or a phone call with a customer and just being like, tell me about, why do you read this? Why are you here? What are you looking to accomplish? And those insights and that they're invaluable. Like there's no way to say, it's hard to say, well, that was worth that, or that's not worth the time. 30 minutes, an hour a week, one call.
Ask you, how long do you tend to talk to those folks if you get them on? Like if you can get them to say yes, how long do they talk with you?
Yeah, I put a time limit at 30 minutes. I don't do any longer than 30 minutes. I can convince someone for 30 minutes fairly easy. If you ask for more than that, sometimes it's a challenge. It's like, you want an hour? I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, no. Are you paying me for the hour? And sometimes we do incentivize, but it's really a 30-minute call. So as someone who's performing the interviews, if you're just getting on a call with your readers, it's really important. And outside of a sales, like get your mind out of, I'm going to sell them this or I'm going to fix this. Just truly understand, why do you read our publication? Why do you click on our links? What's going on with that? How did you find us? And not being willing to try to sell them anything else or fix anything. Or if they say, well, actually, I stopped reading all 3 months ago because your stuff was crap. And don't get defensive. Don't try to defend it and say, well, no, actually, What you do is that's an opportunity to go, okay, tell me more about that.
Right. You just want to receive.
Yes. All you're trying to do is learn and understand. That's my old school tactic that I swear by.
What about you, Amanda? What's your old school tactic that you swear by?
It's really just consumption, purposeful consumption.
Okay.
I think with tools like SparkToro, you can identify, which some of the influential podcasts are, some of the influential YouTube channels, websites that your audience frequents.
Right.
But from there, I do really think it's on you to consume that content. When I was working at a snack company and I was running PR for the company, I was kind of new to the PR type of role, that type of niche. So what I did was I read all of the food trade publications, because that's kind of the only way to do it, like to get that kind of fluency, to understand maybe what the gaps in their content coverage might be. And to understand how to create pitches that actually resonate with the writers and the editors. And, for any media publishers who are here, we're probably nodding like, like, of course, duh. But I think it's less obvious to some people who aren't really trained in this. So I really do think purposeful consumption is the way to go. And I want to be careful to say purposeful, because I don't just mean like just be a media junkie and listen to all the things. It's also like be targeted about it, right? Like just the influential ones, to start, understand the gaps, understand what the opportunities might be for you, and understand the trends. Like where are the topics going? What do we think is going to come next? Right. And being on that forefront is something that we all want to do, right?
Which is pretty good, and that's very interesting, because a lot of what prediction is, when you're doing successful prediction, is recognizing patterns. And the only way for you to recognize patterns is to do research and have a knowledge base, so that you could see, like, okay, I've seen this before. I think we can either go 1 or 1B, and you won't be totally off, and it's 5. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just kind of being knowledgeable and knowing your business is a really good tip. I like that a lot, Amanda. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
One of you guys mentioned influence, and I was wondering, how do you find sources of influence, and then get them to do work with you?
Yeah, I want to cover this first. I'm just excited about this. I'm like, right. So yes, there is SparkToro, but I will also say there are some free SparkToro tools. So I think it's sparktoro.com/tools. You can check the Spark score of a given Twitter user, so you can see maybe
I'm gonna check mine as soon as we're done with this.
Yeah, it's fun, because it gives you a picture of how engaged someone's following might be.
Mhm.
So
0 for me.
well, maybe there's someone with 100,000 followers
Mhm.
who maybe they don't have a very engaged following, but maybe there's someone with 10,000 followers who
Okay.
gets a ton of engagement.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
might be better off going with a 10,000 person following.
Yeah.
But in this tool, you'll see things like
Mhm.
average number of retweets or likes, shares, those kinds of things. But what you'll also see is some of the related accounts. So this is what I think is really interesting when you need to kind of quickly find some sources of influence. You
Mhm.
can at least find the other. I think it's 10 total, but like 8 or 9 or so other social accounts that
Mhm.
a given Twitter account tends to engage with most.
Yep.
So this might signal coworkers, close friends,
Mhm.
or very niche interests. So I think that is helpful in finding the sources of influence. And then I also just think going through some of who influential people are following.
Mhm.
And then, of course, running actual SparkToro searches and seeing, if my audience frequently talks about mindfulness, what are
Mhm.
some of the websites they frequent? What are some of the social accounts they follow? And then also looking, and this is also in SparkToro, looking
Mhm.
at some of the text insights. So maybe somebody who talks about mindfulness online also talks about meditation. Maybe they
Mhm.
also talk about physical activity. And those are things that you'll be able to see as sort of that holistic kind of, I don't want to say trending topic because those are kind of daily things, but like sort of the
Mhm.
holistic themes that might be in a person's, that might be top of mind for a person over a given 3 to 4 month period.
Almost like a keyword bubble. So it'd be like the
Yeah.
person in the middle, and there'll be certain things that like resonate big, and all the way down to like little, small, super granular details. And does this also kind of mitigate for bots? And I don't know if bots are as much of a problem on the Twitter side, but I notice on Instagram sometimes you'll see someone, they have 13,000 followers, and every picture that's liked is like 20 likes. And it just, does SparkToro allow for you to kind of mitigate for those type of false?
It kind of does, and that's kind of what Spark Score aims to address, right? Like
Mhm.
if an account has 100,000 followers and low engagement, it'll show a lower Spark Score, which
Got it.
might be an indicator that they have low engagement. And you can also check fake followers with
Mm.
SparkToro. That's one of our tools
Really?
too. Yeah, and we define fake followers as um, it doesn't necessarily mean someone bought followers, right? But if there are a lot of bot accounts that follow someone, that would constitute a fake follower. And bot
Definitely.
account might be like an account that was newly created that doesn't tweet and that doesn't have any followers. That
Right.
would kind of constitute a bot account.
Yeah. Every once in a while, if I've ever seen a disagreement happen on Twitter, and then the person notes that they stopped the argument because it's like, you created that Twitter account like 3 days ago, and no one
Right.
follows you. Never mind. And then there's like I'm a lurker in Twitter, so I'm always just watching and seeing what people are up to, because this is my business, and it's like, oh, that's a good way to, like, before you get into it with someone, just quickly look and go, oh no, you're new and strange, no thank you,
Mhm.
instead of spending the next 3 weeks yelling at someone online, giving them engagement and growing their following if you're a notable person, which happens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So now that we talked about what things, kind of how you do things right, what are people getting wrong about audience research? Adrienne.
I mean, there are quite a few things. I think, you
That
know,
exhale seemed like everything.
I mean, not to be, no, not everything. I think what people mostly do wrong is they assume it doesn't work. I don't want, why waste time on that? I don't want to do that. Like, I'll just create it. I know who my audience is. Like, I've been doing this for 35 years. Um, and that's great. And you probably do have an idea, but you don't know the subtle nuances, and you're definitely not able to identify shifts before they happen.
Yeah.
And publishers and media companies are getting hit hard because of these iOS updates and these third party, like all of this restriction that's happening.
Yep.
If
Yep.
you don't know who your audience is, if you don't know your reader, like in that way of like, I know how they identify, I know how they behave, and I know why they behave the way they do. If you don't know them in that way, you are at risk with all of
Mm-hmm.
these iOS updates and this third party. Like, if that's how you're learning about your audience, you're going to be hurting if you're not already.
Yeah.
And so when they say, well, audience research doesn't work, usually it's a matter of either I don't know how to do audience research,
Mm-hmm.
or I did it once and it didn't work because you probably didn't do it right. Like maybe
Yep.
even in the interview you were defensive, or like you didn't ask the right questions, or whatever your approach may have been. Or you did it and then now you have all this data that's just like sitting on a CMO's desk and is like a Google Drive and nobody's using it. So I hear
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes. It's like, well, it just doesn't work. I don't want to waste my time doing that. And usually when I uncover and dig and kind of get to the core of their fear, because that's essentially what it is, they're afraid they're
Mm-hmm.
going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money and not have any new information and not have
Right.
any other way to go. It's one of those things. It's either I don't know how to do it, or I've done it and we probably didn't do it well, or we did it and we did it okay, but we never used it. The stuff is just sitting there. And so, I really just say, if you feel like audience research doesn't work, ask yourself if that's one of your reasons. Like, are those one of the things that you've done? And then really try to understand how to improve it. Once you learn how to do it, and once you've done it a little bit, once you've had one conversation, once you've really been able to like get into a social listening tool or like a
Mm-hmm.
SparkToro tool and play around and understand who your audience is with those tools, or even just having those conversations, it almost becomes like audience research begets more audience research. If you do it
Right.
once, you kind of learn a bit, you get a little bit more comfortable, and then you can do a little bit more. Yeah, so I think that not just letting that assumption or that fear that it doesn't work get in your way,
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to learn how to do it maybe in a different way. Like maybe understand that there's a new approach, that there's other ways to go about it, and just be willing to give it a shot again and see.
Right.
Yeah. And I would also just add, like, to the on kind of the other side of that coin, I think there's also the notion that people assume they already know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to do that. I already
Mm-hmm.
know what my audience listens to. I already know who our competitors are. Like,
Yeah.
that's what they listen to. That's what they read. Like, I don't need to do this. And I mean, that's really just our biases, right? We all do
People do
this.
not like change and they don't want to have to
Yeah.
shift. And
Yeah.
if you find new information out, then you have to do something with it.
Totally. And we see this in marketing all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying marketing because I'm a marketer. But like, we always hear in marketing, it's like I've been marketing to HR professionals for 10 years. I know exactly
What they
what they do.
want.
And like, of course, if you're in a given field for X amount of years, you do have a
Mm-hmm.
level of competency and expertise
For sure.
that
For
most people
sure.
don't have. But it doesn't mean that the landscape isn't changing, right? And there
Absolutely.
might be gaps in your knowledge. And maybe you'll
Mm-hmm.
realize when you do some research, like, oh, I've been marketing to HR professionals for 10 years. I didn't know that they read Entrepreneur magazine. Like, I didn't know that one. So
Mm-hmm.
there are always opportunities like that in any niche, in any kind of audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good. I think those are really good insights. And even if you're not necessarily, I don't know, am I a marketer? I support marketing activity.
You do.
I
Mm-hmm.
do. And even for me, sometimes when someone quickly gives me a no, I'm like, oh, wait, I don't think they understood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an opportunity when you hear a no sometimes to just unpack, clarify, and then re-inform. That's why I like the idea of always having a lot of information, doing a lot of research, so that it can be more than just, one fun fact and someone's like, yeah. When you have to sometimes give people 50 fun facts and then say them again in a different way, and then they're like, maybe, yeah. It's
Yeah.
still not like, applauding when you walk into the room or come on Zoom. Um, when it comes to content, you guys, because I spend a lot of time working with my clients and figuring out from a SEO perspective, what are some of the best content pieces to put out. How do you guys decide whether it's newsletter, blog, social, etc.? Like, how do you come up with what's the best course of action for client?
Yeah. So a lot of my own content strategy comes from what internal messaging do we need to create? Like what is the goal that we're trying to do? So once again, we're kind of talking about, or my approach is for B2B SaaS. So that's kind of where my ideas and my answers kind of come from for content strategy or content creation.
Yeah.
But then also that audience, like what are their questions? What are their concerns? What are they struggling with? What were their praises? Like if you're talking about a product or something like that, they usually, if they've ranted and raved and said how amazing it is, then maybe that's a case study, or maybe that's just a really cool blog post that's going to demonstrate the way that they were successful. But for like media and publishing companies, that content creation can come from like that reader intent, right? Like why are they reading, and then let that filter through the content that you create. Understand what they're coming to you for, and that can help be the guiding light as to why you're creating. If you know that you're, if you're the science journal and your people are coming to you because they're doctors and they need like evidence-based research immediately, then that's the kind of stuff you're going to stick to. It's not like you're going to be creating,
TikTok dances.
Yeah, the doctor's best outfits last week. Like just because it's maybe a relevant topic in your audience, you want to make sure that it's still through your point of view, that you're still the one that's kind of being guiding the messaging, essentially, that it's through why their reader intent, essentially.
Yeah. I think the way that I see content, and I don't know if this might be helpful for some background for our audience here. My initial background in content was in tech news. I used to work at paidcontent.org and then at gigaom.com, then got into content marketing. And now I'm doing mostly content marketing. But anyway, so the way I see content now is I see websites/blogs as the master resource. So that is kind of the source of truth for the thing that I want to say. Like, I'm going to be an expert in this topic. It's going to live on this site or this blog. And then I see the other content channels like a newsletter and like social channels as being extensions of that. So if I have a hard-hitting piece about audience research that I want to be the source of truth, and I want this to be like the de facto thing that I point people to when they say, what is audience research? Like maybe I would point them to that blog. But then I would use my newsletter, which goes out every other week or so, to take bite-sized snippets of that to make it more digestible. So the newsletter is just sort of the means to be like, okay, maybe you don't know what audience research is. Maybe you're not even sure if you care. Here is one tidbit that you need to know in like 80 words about audience research. Then I would look at social media as, what are some other ways I can tell the story that is native to that platform? So this is why I personally really like Twitter threads a lot, because it's native to the platform. And because it's native to the platform, Twitter will favor it, will Twitter itself, the platform will like it.
Yeah.
It becomes easier for people to read. So it's also kind of about accessibility, right? Like yes, I would want to tweet my hard-hitting piece about audience research, but if I really want to make it accessible to people, the concept accessible to people, I would repurpose it into a Twitter thread among like 10 to 15 tweets or so. So I would kind of think about it like that. Blogger site is source of truth. Newsletter is an extension of that. Social media is a means to make it more accessible.
When I map that out in my brain, when I do it for content for my clients, it's a pyramid. So it's like, what is the one main thing that we're doing? Okay, how can I turn this into 3 or 4 other little, and then here's the social is like the numerous little pieces. I think that's great. And I tell my clients, look, we want to be the Wikipedia of our topic, whatever that is. When someone goes to search it, we want to have, if it's something that we want to own, if it's something that's true to us, we want to be the ones that, have that hard-hitting piece and the truth and set the tone and create the definition. I think that's right on point, Amanda. Absolutely.
Amanda, I have a question for you. You mentioned Twitter. Outside of Twitter, the other platforms, I don't want to call them text-based platforms, but like Facebook and a little bit Instagram. What's happened? How would you apply what you just described to like a Facebook or Instagram?
Yeah, I think for Facebook or Instagram, I think, that's where photos or graphics play really well, especially in Instagram, right? You can do like a sort of slideshow on the grid. So of your Instagram posts, you can maybe repurpose some of the content into like 4 to 5 slides, so
like
to speak.
Images. Okay.
Yeah, and then I would probably take that and put that into an Instagram story.
Yeah.
Maybe with this when they launch link stickers, I would add the link to that. That's how I would do it for Instagram. For Facebook, I would probably consider a graphic text. And there's more real estate in terms of the captions in Facebook, right? I mean, like captions in Instagram, yes, you can totally do and you should, but they are harder to read. So, sorry, going back to Instagram for a second, I would do the sort of like image, text on image carousel, and then I would use the caption to enhance that. So the caption might say in, I don't know, fewer than 40 words, probably. Like maybe the story behind the story. Maybe I would tag some of the sources to kind of to amplify them. So on Facebook, I'd probably think about the text on image, and then because the caption has more real estate there, I would be more comfortable giving some of the insights in the caption.
Nice. So it would be if we were starting with Twitter, if you use the Twitter thread setup, you could then visualize the Twitter thread setup in an Instagram post, and then do both in a Facebook post. If you okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah, thank you for summing that up. That was better.
That's good.
Excellent. I really appreciate you guys. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to see if we had any questions that we needed to get answers for. I'm just checking the little question box place. Because if we don't, I don't see any questions. Okay, it looks like from my producer that we don't have any additional questions. So I did want to take the time out to thank you guys. But before we go, please tell people where they can find you, where they could see you, and how they should follow you. Whoever wants to go first, jump in.
Okay, so I'm Adrienne Barnes, founder of Best Buyer Persona. You can find me at bestbuyerpersona.com. Also at Adrienne Nicole on Twitter. I probably spend a gross amount of time. No, I know I do on Twitter. So those are the places that I am. Happy to talk to. If anybody has questions about like a buyer persona, a reader persona, just shoot me a DM. I'm really approachable, accessible, and happy to help and answer in any way I can.
Yeah, and this is true. Adrienne is approachable, accessible, and she's awesome. I'm Amanda Natividad. You can check out SparkToro on SparkToro.com. I'm also on Twitter, and I also spend too much time there at Amanda Nat. And then, of course, SparkToro is on Twitter at SparkToro.
Do you run that account, Amanda?
Yes. Or actually, it runs itself. It is a sentient being.
Love it.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, if you want to keep in touch with us at iPullRank, you can find us at iPullRank Agency, I believe, at twitter.com and on Instagram as well. And we are on LinkedIn. We're pretty active there, so please follow us. Again, I'm Chantel Branch, and I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye,
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you, Chantel.
You're welcome. Chantel. Bye.